So let's go back to the book just for a moment here. So there's an example of a book, okay, sitting on a table. Does that look familiar, Sean? That was Sean's photo he sent. So when you have that thing in front of you, what you want to do is you want to assess, you got 4 edges primarily of this book. So what you're wanting to do is assess the relative angles of things, okay? So I have this kind of ruler here. So let's say I want to assess the angle of this right edge right here. Right there. I don't know if you can see that or not. So there's my ruler's edge there. Now here, it's easy because I have a flat, a flat thing juxtaposed against a flat thing, the photograph itself, right? In real life, you're going to have to kind of have that ruler floating out in front of you. You're going to have to close one eye and look past the edge of the ruler and line it up with that thing. Once you do that, then you forget the thing, and you just look at the angle of the ruler at that point. And you memorize it relative to 3 basic angles: horizontal, vertical, and 45 degrees. Would you say this angle right here that I'm striking here is a 45 or closer to 45 or closer to horizontal or closer to vertical along this edge right here?
I think closer to vertical.
Okay, let's get rid of the photo for a second. So there's the angle. That would literally be the angle that you would draw on the sheet of paper. Now it's a hit and miss. You don't know if you're getting it right, right? So, but let's document that. Oh. Hopefully we can document. There it is. So is that closer to a vertical or a 45? Did you say, Sean, you said more vertical?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay. Anybody agree or disagree with that?
I feel like it's a little bit more than 45, but not completely too close to the vertical. It's like a little bit of 45.
Yeah, it could be a little more vertical than 45, definitely. But it's kind of caught somewhere between, right? So that's all you have to rely on. That's all you can do, is you can kind of guesstimate that, right? I have the luxury of having, using that photograph, right? Boom. The other thing is how long to make that line. I don't know. I just know that I'm documenting the angle of it. Realize you only have 3 things to think about here when you're doing a perspective drawing from real life situation, using line as edge as a way to kind of reveal edge, right? These 3 things are this: angle, length, and position on the paper. Those are the only 3 choices you have, and you can construct if you get all those 3 choices right, with every mark you make, with every line you make, voila, you have rendered a beautiful drawing that's indicative of a scene you're looking at, okay, in this scenario. Okay, we're not talking about value or anything like that. Okay, so the next step would be to figure out maybe what the back edge is. So let's look at this angle. So I'm going to kind of imagine this as your ruler. You're closing one eye, and you're looking past the edge of the ruler and lining it right up with the edge of that back edge of that book. Now, what's that new angle? Is that horizontal, more towards horizontal, more towards 45, more towards vertical?
More towards horizontal?
Yeah, I think so, definitely. Yeah, so if I were to assess that, it would be maybe something like that, right? Just a little off horizontal. So using horizontal as a point of reference helps you out in terms of assessing these things. So let's just document that. So there's the two angles of the two sides of the books that I'm trying to figure out here. I haven't dealt with how long to make a line yet. Where they intersect gives me that corner, right? Right. So before I deal with the other two angles here, what I'll do is I'll try to figure out how long to make these two lines. How would I figure that out?
Are you using like the length of your pencil
Mm-hmm.
or a ruler to approximate it?
Which one do you think is longer? Which edge do you think is longer? That back right edge, or the back edge or the right edge?
I think the right edge.
Yeah, now we've been fooled before, right? But it looks like that's the longer dimension, right? So I'm literally going to measure with my finger here, but when I'm going to measure the back edge with my fingers. I'm going to turn it and stack it into the front edge, and I'm getting 1 and about 1/4. Now you see why the piece of paper drawing is so important, understanding foreshortening. So I'm finding that the back edge right here fits in the length of the front, or the right edge, 1 1/4 times. So let's go back to the drawing. Obviously I wouldn't need this excess stuff here anymore. Oh, whatever. So we don't get things right the first time. Now if I'm happy with the length of this right here, that's creating the sense of scale or how big the drawing is going to be, okay? The only variable now is how long to make this line. So I'll do a kind of a hit and miss here. I'll kind of shorten it up a little bit. So I'm going to take my fingers now, you can't see me do this, and I'm going to measure the length of this line now and stack it down the length of this line. See if I get that 1 to 1 1/4. 1, I got 1 and over 1 1/2. So I have two choices. I can lengthen this line back out a little bit more or shorten this one. Let's try it again. So I'm measuring the back and I'm getting 1 and about 1/2. So I'll shorten it again. So there's my corner of the front of the book based on my visual measurement. Okay. Maybe you understand what I did, right? There's the front corner. There's obviously that one corner where they intersect one another, and there's the back corner. So all I would have to do now would be to assess the other angles. We don't even need to do it. Let's just pretend here that I'm seeing it. So is that correct? Is that correct, or is that correct? Based on your knowledge of perspective, linear perspective, vanishing points. This, or this?
The last option,
Yeah, why?
so that they can intersect in a point further on if they were to continue going out.
That's right. So if this line kept going, and this line, like the railroad tracks going across the desert, kept going, they're going to go to a vanishing point somewhere, right? Way off the piece of paper, way off, way above what I'm drawing. So that's the knowledge of what's happening with two parallel lines moving away from us gives us a good idea of what the angle of this edge is, right? And we could do the same with this, by the way. Let's make a parallel line to that one down here. Parallel. Those two not going to ever meet. Those two going to meet. That's too much, okay? Because the front of this book right here is not far away from being horizontal to our body. So we don't want the perspective to be too much in this case, right? So your default here could actually be making this line right here actually literally parallel to this one, and you'd get away with that, okay? So there, it's probably not going to be 100% accurate, but pretty close. Now the camera's going to create this forced perspective, a little bit of distortion there because of the wide angle lens, okay? And then verticals are just vertical. Make those parallel because there's not much space between them. You can kind of just default to have those spaces be parallel. And there's the drawing of the book setting in space. Okay. So that's what we're seeing. Here's what happens sometimes with students, and I see this, quite often. It's okay. They know that book is a rectangle, right? So here's how they draw it. No, I can't do it like that. I thought I could use the rectangle tool. I can't. I'll have to use this. They'll try to maintain the right angles of the books right here, right angle, because they know those are right angles. So what happens is it starts to look like a rectangular form that's kind of floating on its corner or something, right? Rather than what it should be. Something like that. Notice that these are no longer right angles here. Right? If I were to take a protractor to this drawing, that wouldn't be a right angle anymore, nor would that. That would be bigger than a right angle, smaller than a right angle, bigger than the right angle. So it almost becomes a parallelogram, right? But our knowledge of this rectangular shape overpowers our ability to observe it sometimes. Okay? So, some folks did that to begin with and then corrected that. Does that make sense to you, that explanation I did of how we have to overcome that knowledge of the rectangular shape of the book and actually do this visual measurement to see what's going on? Does that make sense? I had a student last semester who swore that she was seeing it this way. Okay? That's the way I see it. No, that's the way your brain is telling you see it. Okay? You don't see it that way. Your eyes are seeing something else. So the visual measurement is really important in that regard. Okay? So today what we're going to do is draw interior view. So this is my living room. So which wall am I facing more directly, the left wall or the right wall in this photograph?
The left wall?
Yeah. What gives you that clue?
It takes up more mass in the picture.
Well, it does. It doesn't mean that, I could have turned a little bit and focused more on the right wall, and still I would be facing the left wall more directly. Okay, my body would be open more to it. So you are correct in that, but it's not because it takes up more of the picture plane. There's another cue that you're probably seeing that you're not articulating quite yet. There's another cue that should let you know that you're facing it more directly.
The angle of the line on the ceiling.
That's it. Yep. Which of those lines is more angular? Which is more of a 45 and which is flatter?
The ceiling line on the right plane is more 45.
Yeah. It's not quite 45, but it's pretty darn close, right? So if I were to put a ruler up there and draw that angle, right? Just mimic that a little bit. See if I can get a layer here. Whoop, like that. That's the angle of that. I don't know how far down it goes, but I'll just kind of draw something like that. Okay. Whereas if I were to line the ruler up with the wall I'm facing more directly, that's a flatter angle. Right? So that's going to look something like that. And of course, where they intersect would give me the corner, right, of the room. and the corner is just a vertical. So there I've documented. The corner of that room as I'm seeing it. Now, unfortunately, you're working, and I want you to try to work from real life here, okay? So you don't have the luxury of working from the photograph. So you got to kind. It's not as easy, you know. It's going to take some hit and miss sort of kind of things going on to figure that out. And I can't see the bottom down here where it comes in, but I can kind of see a little bit of the bottom of the wall over here. And you'll see, I'll show you in a second a video I made based on this drawing. I can see where it comes out behind this stereo equipment stand here, you know. So that gives me the outline of the, of the structure of the drawing, right? Okay, and then the stand would be here somewhere, and the couch is over here, and the mirror is over here, etc., etc. But cueing into these major angles is really important in this drawing, okay? When you first start to tackle this stuff. I'm going to show you a few examples of student work from last semester. So here was Christine, I think her name was. That was her first attempt at the and it's a nice drawing of the interior. And then this was her second attempt. All line drawing, right? Or no value yet. We're not doing any of that yet. Same room. Two different angles on the room, right? This first version, she's almost looking straight on. It's almost a one-point scheme. She's almost looking straight on at this wall right here. This other version, and you can know that by looking at the angles of the tops and bottoms of these walls here, those shift because her position in the room shifted. She moved from over on being over towards the left wall to moving right in the space and looking into the corner. Right, straighter on into the corner rather than straight on into against the left wall, which is this over here. So you can see how your position in the room will change the relative angle of everything. Same drawing, two different angles. Okay. Now these are a bit deceiving, but because they're finished, right? So you don't see all the kind of struggle that goes into it. This, remember the person I said who swore to God the book looked like a rectangle bouncing on its corner? She didn't see it that way, but that's what it looks like to me. Here she is struggling a little bit with the angle of the top and bottom of the wall. Again, she's flattening these out, so she's making them very almost straight across here, right? Almost straight across, where I showed her that if she's looking in the corner of the room, the top and bottom of those walls are going to be a much more of an angle to her. Okay. She did the same thing. I love her drawings. They're so full of life and beautiful. But she struggled a little bit with the perspective issue. Okay. So see how she wanted to make the countertops go straight over? And even the bottom of the counter over here go straight over? She tipped this a little bit, which is good. She did a pretty good job there, but straight over. The hood of above the stove would go up. Notice the horizon line here is kind of, little, the eye level she was looking at, like she's sitting in a chair maybe or something, about that level. So everything above that would tip down as it goes to the vanishing point over here. The stove there'd be a vanishing point over here. Everything on this side of the room would go up in this direction, right? Go down in this direction. So understanding where your horizon line is really important in this stuff. But I wanted to show you this just to show you how it's very easy to underestimate the angle of things. You can kind of see by the bottom of that counter over here where the cabinets are, okay? So she had a tendency to flatten things out in her drawings. Loved her work, though. Incredible work. Another example, Paulette here. We did two versions. I'll just show you. That was her first perspective. We're not going to do that. And then the second. So pretty nice drawings here, right? Really, really nice drawings. I think I threw it in the trash here. Let's see what this is. No. That's yours, Tosh. I haven't got to it yet, so I got to get to that. There's no. I don't know what I did with it. I had I had a version where I drew the horizon line in. So, but nice drawing there. Here's Sarah's. Oh, that's Paulette's. So Sarah started out. She did about 5 or 10 drawings. Felt like that was her first version. So in this version, she's literally kind of looking straight on at the wall with the windows in it, and totally not seeing how this kind of little kick-out wall was engaging the space. Okay, and then after working with her a long time on the drawing, this is her finished version. Okay. So you can kind of see all the nuances, right, that she wasn't capturing in the first version. Even though it feels like she's looking straight on at this wall where the window is, she's not really. There's a little bit of a tilt as the tops and bottoms of these parallel lines here are kind of converging down a little bit to a vanishing point way off to the left side of the composition. Obviously, these, she's looking down the length of this wall over here, right? And then this wall is kind of facing her directly, and then foreshortening on the closet here. Okay. So very complex set of contingencies here when we draw. Oh, there's the one Paulette. So in this view, I was pointing out to Paulette, from her point of view here, the horizon line's a little above halfway the height of the room, right? So like she was standing. I think she was standing at an easel in drawing this. Okay. So obviously all these lines will converge to a vanishing point somewhere, which I'll get into in a second in terms of how to determine that. And this is nice drawing too. This was Judy's first version, and then here's her second. Different side of the room, but really nice drawings, I think. Really minimalist, but really beautifully done. Okay, so just some examples from the previous class. These are all 18 by 24. And we might take this into, next Thursday as well. So this is a pretty complex drawing we're going to be making here, okay? So don't expect to get it done in an hour's time. You might get the preliminary version done in an hour's time. But okay, so any questions so far? I'm going to run through a video here real quick. I did a video of... It's on the project description, so you can kind of watch it on your own. I did a drawing sitting in the corner looking at that scene I just showed you of my living room. So here's hour 1. Okay. So see how I'm just blocking it in, very light marks, just kind of feeling my way through the drawing, not certain about anything, just kind of, broken lines, using the straight edge for everything, no curves, right? I want you to really think about angle when you make these drawings, but very lightly done. That's hour 1, okay? And so hour 2, start to kind of refine it just a little bit. So I'm kind of locking things in a little bit more, a little bit cleaner edges here, but still using the straight edge even for the couch over here. To kind of deal with these angles of things, relative angles, even that mirror on the wall, which is an oval. And there's hour 3. Now I'm going in and starting to kind of do a little bit of detail here in terms of, the thickness of the mirror, right? But notice how I'm using the straight edge to do that, right? Figuring out the dynamics of the perspective of that oval form, right, as it's facing me. There's a book on a table, right? That's... it took, I don't know how long you did to do that book drawing, probably 15 minutes to an hour, maybe something like that. Well, there's that alone. Just think about, the complexity of this whole thing. So that could take a half hour just to draw that, So it's not easy. And then the finished version. Just cleaned everything up, right? Did some subtracting, erased away the kind of excess marks, so you get a really clean, pristine kind of drawing at the end. And then I have I did this just as a little bit of a way to show how I was thinking about the box form, even though it's like that stand that holds the stereo equipment, right? It's a cube in space, right? So I understood, I saw the angle of the bottom of this, that blue line right there, that faint blue line. So I knew the angle of this radiator form right here, so I assumed that that was the angle of the bottom of the walls, went back to the corner. Couldn't see the corner here, but I assumed it. So thinking in terms of transparency is really important in terms of drawing from life, okay? So don't, that's why we do that interior view. Don't get caught up in the just drawing the surface forms, right? You know, in the kind of trap of just drawing the surface forms. So there's that Sarah's drawing that I showed you earlier. Now, because she was sitting in the chair, and the way I did this is I figured out based on her, the angle of the bottom of this wall and the angle of the top of that little kick wall, okay? It's like a kick wall, it's called, because it's not a tall wall, and then we get the roof, you know, the angle of the roof here. All I did was figure out where the height of her horizon, her eye level was, probably her sitting in the room, and then projected those two edges into infinity on the horizon line. That gave me the vanishing point for all the planes moving away from us, okay? So it allowed me to see what the angle of this was, allowed me to see what the angle of this was. You can kind of see how she did errantly, wasn't understanding the angle of that, and finding that vanishing point helps you see that. Now it takes a while to find the vanishing point, but if you can, it does help to find the vanishing point. The problem is, though, if you're looking directly into the corner and you're not like facing one of the walls more directly, you're probably not going to see the vanishing point on the drawing, because they'll be off of the edge of the drawing like we did with our made-up interior views, right? Because we're looking right directly into the corner. So it's not, it doesn't always work to find the vanishing point in a drawing. So you just got to kind of be careful with that. Okay. Okay. Let's see here. Can I get out of that? There we go. Okay. Any questions? I'm just going to go over this video real quick here, and then I'll set you on your way in terms of your drawing. So this video, which is, you can find it on the project description I sent out. I literally sat in the room and drew it, but what I did with this video is I started to do some assessments here on the left. You can see this little screen up here, doing visual measurement. So there's my hand, obviously, right? So what I'm doing there is measuring the angle of the top of those windows. This with a pencil, trying to get the angle of the top of those windows. So then I go over and document it on this drawing. Well, what I'm doing on this drawing is literally walking through for you how to build your drawing. So every angle I'm drawing over here, I measure or assess over here. So you can see how complex it is, right? So here I'm talking about, like, how do I figure out how wide to make these windows versus how tall. So with my pencil over here, I literally measure the width right there and stack it into the height. So in addition to doing visual angle approximation, while I'm doing this, I have to do visual measurement. And when I was joking with you guys last time about the thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands of relationships that you can find in life, in the world around you, literally you can. You know, the width of this window can be compared to everything else in this drawing if I wanted to get really technical with it, right? Right now I'm just going to compare it to its height, right? So right there fits in the height of that window set, one with a little extra. See the little extra right there? So I go to my drawing. Can you hear that? And there's the width.
Yep.
Okay. And there's the height. So I'll just double check and see if my assumptions were correct. And they're pretty good, right? So I'm taking a
Now, this
guess
is
and
not
then checking.
the end of the story over here, right? I haven't finished drawing the vertical, all the vertical, but I'm starting to get a sense of the width. This is why it's really nice to kind of use your straight edge as a sketching tool. Where you're just kind of gently blocking in relationships, you know.
That's another important thing here. I'm not relying on one specific line to represent the edge of something. I'm seeing it as kind of a sketchy process, right? Just kind of blocking in. What happens is students they put one line down, and what happens psychologically, they're locked into that line being representing a particular edge, and it doesn't ever move. And then the whole drawing's off because you just do that over and over again. So Tyler did a really good job on her book drawing of blocking in with numerous others did as well. Just using your edge, your straight edge, and kind of doing these little sketchy lines that kind of are just this kind of blocking or chopping process of the drawing. And that's why you can see in the drawing here I have 2 or 3 or 4 lines representing a particular edge, right? It just frees me up to know that I don't have to rely on one being perfect, right? It's a psychological thing.
Yourself at the beginning of the drawing, you know, how far over is this thing, you know, et cetera, et cetera. Now, I'm not drawing the corner of the window there, obviously. You know, I could, but, you know, the couch is in the way, so.
I'm looking at that area right there.
So I'm going to talk a little bit now. I haven't put it in, but now we see those 2 ribbons that are holding the curtains together. Remember we said how they're kind of straight across from each other? And so is the other one on the other side. Looks a little higher, but not much. So that gives us the indication that's about eye level.
So what I'm talking about right here, see these ribbons right here? And the ones over here on the other wall, they're almost on a line with one another. So that would tell you two items on 2 different walls are lined up with one another, height-wise. They're probably eye level. So where would the horizon line be in this drawing?
Right where the 3 ribbons are aligned.
Yeah. So that gives me a really nice way to figure out where
in this case, or
horizon line is.
You know, me when I positioned the camera, I was in a standing position. So there's horizon line relative to the scene. And how do I know that? Because objects on this wall line up with objects on this wall, right? Same height. Right? So that they all line up at eye level, right? So that tells me that that's the that is the horizon line. Now the horizon line isn't kind of in the scene, right? But it's an imaginary construct that corresponds to my eye level relative to the scene, right? And I know somewhere along there, way outside of the scene in this case, so we'll talk about that later, the vanishing points would be the 2 vanishing points. But that's okay. You know, it's general.
So I'm just kind of building this thing. You
You
can feel free to
really hard at,
watch this. I'm not going to show the whole thing.
Kind of get really. That's how vertical, if not more.
So this is not far off from the. I'm a little closer to the right wall in this scenario, right? So what I'm doing is I am reconstructing the scene a little bit here for you of me standing in the room. So the question would be, can I see the vanishing point on the paper, on the drawing I'm making for any of these walls? That's always the question. We couldn't see it in our drawings we did, our made-up drawings, because we predetermined that they were going to be way off the edge of the drawing, right? But in this scenario, maybe there is a chance of being able to see them. So right there, if I follow back this bottom of this wall, the top of this wall, probably the vanishing point for this right wall right here, I'd be able to see it. It's just past the wall I'm looking a little bit more directly at. Okay. Let's go back to the drawing and see if we can see that in the drawing that I was doing. So here's the room. Okay. And I'm going to, just based on my knowledge here, I'm going to strike a line that would be the bottom of this wall right here. So it'll be an angle probably something like this. So here's the right wall, minus the stereo stand and everything else. Okay, so the question is, where's the horizon line? Again, right even with that ribbon right there, right? So that's about right here. So let me stretch that all the way across, horizon line. So I know somewhere on that horizon line, and this is a guesstimate, that the vanishing point for this wall right here, the right wall, will exist. Now how would I find the vanishing point for this right wall right here? This big wall on the right hand side. What do I need to do? I have enough information to find that. What would I do? I can tell you right now there's enough information on this drawing for me to find the vanishing point for the right wall.
Extend the two lines until they meet each other?
Yep. So let me change the color here. So all I need to do is extend this line. I don't know if it'll land perfectly. Goes to about right there. And this one. Yeah, not 100% perfect, but so right about in this area, probably this angle that I drew here, because I couldn't see it, is not 100% accurate. But I'm going to get a vanishing point like right in here somewhere for this wall. Okay. This wall that I'm facing more directly here where the couch is, if I extend these out, they're going to go way off of the edge of the drawing, right? You can't even see this one right now, but it's going to be something like that. So that vanishing point is going to be way off the edge of the drawing to the right, okay? So sometimes you'll be able to see the vanishing point within your drawing, sometimes not, depending upon how much you're facing one wall directly, okay? Now what I don't want you to do is just sit right in front of one of the walls, because that becomes a one-point drawing. I want you to turn your body a little bit so that maybe you're a little closer to one wall than another, but you're still looking into the corner of a room, okay? In order to get this to be a two-point perspective drawing, okay? Remember when Sarah did this drawing right here? One of the most difficult things about this is figuring out scaling of the drawing. So that was her first version, and this was her finished version. What's the difference between those two in terms of the composition?
It has more of the room in the frame.
Yeah,
so
yeah,
you can
yeah.
triangle to work with.
Exactly, yeah, yeah. And again, that's a hard thing to figure out, you know, so it took her 2 or 3 attempts to finally realize that she had to show more floor, she had to show more ceiling, she had to scale things down. Every mark she makes has to be smaller in order for it to be a more complete, expansive drawing, to get a sense of the space, okay? So when you start your drawing, you might have to start it a couple times in order to try to figure out how much do I want to show of this room that I happen to be looking at, okay? Because the first attempt won't be the correct attempt, okay? You'll always have to kind of start and restart a drawing. I didn't have to do it here because, you know, I kind of have done this for a while, but, you know, if I had my druthers on this drawing, I may have, like, wanted to reduce the size even more so that I could get a little bit more of the composition of the living room in. So if I were to redraw it, I would say maybe that would be the case. Okay, so the bottom line is I want you to draw a corner of your room, using angle approximation and visual measurement as a way to start to block it in. Okay. And thinking about horizon line and the vanishing point as you're working. It'll let you become aware of things, okay? You don't have to literally show that to me, but work with the knowledge of that in the back of your mind, okay? And just start to map out the corner of your room, okay? So choosing the correct corner is another issue, right? getting back far enough away from the scene, sitting in a chair, propping the drawing board on your lap, working in a horizontal configuration so that you're not blocking the view line of the room. Don't put the drawing in a vertical configuration. It's probably better to have it in a horizontal configuration. You can work on a coffee table, lay the drawing on the coffee table and work on a flat surface. I tend to like to do that myself, even though I think on this one, on this one I propped the drawing board against the back of a chair. So it became like a drawing table for me, right? Like a angled drawing table. So that worked pretty nicely. I was sitting in one chair and then put another chair up close to me and just prop the drawing board in my lap up against the back of another chair. That's a nice technique to use in terms of doing in situation drawings. And just start to block in what you see, okay? Just start to play with the composition, start to kind of think about all those things we talked about in terms of the drawing of the book in regards to approximating angle and visual measurement and all that. Keep in mind that every odd object in this scene has a relationship. Like, what's the width of this? How many times does the width of this stand fit down its length? How many times does this platter fit into this lamp? How many times does the oval mirror over here fit in the height of this? You got to be inventive in terms of creating these relationships, right? This is where creativity comes in, seeing the world around you and dissecting it and understanding it and creating powerful works based on that observation. You're artists after all, right? Visual artists. You're using the language of vision as part of that thing, right? As part of your expressive charge. So being inventive as a visual artist is really important, and that means being able to really see what's going on in the world around you, okay? And then eventually you start using that as an artist to create your own work. Okay. So any questions about kind of what I want you to do in this drawing? It might be advisable to watch this video. It's on the project description I sent out. So there's a lot of good information here. I did some quick renderings too. So you could check these out as well. Blah, 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 blah. I drew my kitchen, just using the iPad, just as a way to start to think about. I drew the kitchen, the sunroom. So you can kind of skim through these and kind of see how I thought about building the drawing, right? I don't talk about visual measurement or any of these three, but you can get a sense of how to block it in. How to move quickly in a drawing without being obsessed about detail. Okay. The unsuccessful drawings, generally the artist is too obsessed with detail at the beginning, so they don't see the large relationships, and so it's just this bunch of disconnected details. So there's no structure to the drawing because of that. Okay. So in this, obviously, I'm not seeing detail. I'm just kind of seeing these very... then as I work, I start to hone it a little bit more, right? Start to go a little darker in places, and then start erasing, et cetera, et cetera. So there's three of these little videos that aren't narrated at all if you want to kind of see how to approach from a stylistic point of view, the process point of view, these drawings. Okay, so this, like I said, this will probably go into next class too as well. So let's talk about the agenda for the day. 2:30, 3:30, 4:30. 4:30. Let's meet back at, send me what you got done so far at 4:30. That's 4:45. Okay, I'll send you agenda. But, So 4:45, send me what you've got done so far. And then we'll meet at 5. Okay. Talk a little bit. And then I'll send you on your way to work a little bit longer on it, okay? And then by the end of the day, turn in what you have, okay? And I'll grade that, okay? And then we'll take that into Thursday and we'll do a second go around with the drawing, okay? Because there'll probably be some corrections that need to be done on it. And we'll do a second, we'll refine it, right? Fix it, correct it, work on a little bit more, and I'll do a second grade on it. Okay, so this will be a 2-grade piece.
So this is my first in-depth look at nodes. We're looking at parallels. And
One
I'm
here.
If you're an absolute beginner, I'm going to teach you the difference between serial nodes and parallel nodes in just a few minutes.
Oh, that's
you'll
me.
understand
Sorry.
Exactly how they work.
It's like, who the hell is watching a video on?
Look then at my fixed node tree and why I use parallels and a particular technique that I use called dodge and burn.
What's he talking about here? It looks like DaVinci Resolve. I like video processing, so I do. Like somebody was watching another video. How dare you watch somebody watch another video? And I'm pouring my heart and soul out to you. No, Blake was not paying attention to what he was doing. Okay, so any questions? 4:45. Send me what you have. 5 o'clock we'll meet and talk a little bit more about what you're doing. And then by the end of today, okay, it doesn't need to be the end of class, but by the end of the day, turn me in the definitive, by the end of today, first phase of this drawing, okay? All right? Because, like Cherry, you got a softball game and stuff, so that'll give you time to, hopefully, after your softball game, come back and work a little bit on it if you need that time, okay? So by the end of the day, we'll have a definitive gradable product, okay? But at 4:45, we'll see where you're at with it, okay? And then we'll talk a little bit about it at 5, okay? Work lightly, use a straight edge, measure, 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 reassess, subtract, change your drawing, think about overall composition, how much of the room you're showing, all these things. Don't get caught up in detail, move quickly. You know, go over here, up here, down here. Don't just obsess in one area. It's an overall thing you're thinking about, okay? This is a really complex drawing, okay? We're not, no longer are we focused on just drawing one thing, right? We have to think about left, right, up, down, over, middle, you know, all at the same time almost, okay, as you make the drawing. Very difficult, very difficult. Any questions? No? And you can use that time to review video too as well, okay? So it doesn't have to, you don't have to be working 100% of the time. Okay. So we'll see you at 5. And I'll see your drawings at 4:45. Sound good?
Yep.
Sounds good.
Alrighty.
Sounds good.
Okay. Talk to you in a little bit.